my biggest thing too, I would just say is like, ask yourself, how do you want to live? Because I think just that chat alone that we met on, there's been so many more comments at it. And it just is sad reading how many people are like miserable and they feel stuck. And I'm just like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you truly can create a different life. You just have to take the risk.
Welcome to Scrubs Unzipped, unveiling healthcare's hidden passions, the podcast where we pull back the curtain of healthcare to reveal the extraordinary stories, passions, and struggles of our healthcare heroes. But we're not stopping there. In each episode, we'll introduce you to doctors, nurses, therapists, and more who don't just wear scrubs. They have lives, dreams, and a burning desire to make a difference. And your host, a dedicated respiratory therapist, leads the way. So get ready to be inspired, informed, and uplifted as we celebrate the unsung heroes of healthcare, the passions that drive them, and explore ways to reshape the future of healthcare. Welcome to Scrubs Unzipped.
Hello, welcome to Scrubs Unzipped. This is your host, Anne Marie, and I have a special guest with me. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Yanisa. I'm all the way out here in Cali, enjoying the beautiful weather outside.
Awesome. So, can you tell me a little bit about your background and what drives your passion for life and healthcare and your side hustle?
Yeah, and I have been doing nursing now for basically 5 years. When I started nursing, I started in ICU, so that's kind of been all I've known in that sense. I went to school initially to do biology pre-med and then had that really discouraged by some teachers of mine. Just like the route I specifically wanted to do was naturopathic medicine. And so I had to kind of figure something else out. And being a daughter of a nurse, my mom was very much an advocate for going to nursing school because she said I can at least start to work and then I could figure it out from there. So I went to nursing school instead, started working, and I knew I wanted to do something with critical care, and I was thinking ER, but my director at the time was basically kind of encouraging me to kind of consider doing more of the ICU work first. And so I started there, and then I just never have left. And so I've been in ICU for almost 5 years, and yeah. And then I totally already forgot the second part of that question. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's fine. So you've been a nurse for 5 years and you work in ICU. So can you tell me about like a patient or a success story that deeply resonated with you and reflects the impact of your healthcare work or side passion?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I would say I don't feel like in my head, like there's a lot of people that I've seen like leave the unit. I've just because we're kind of usually that last stop, like people either get better or they don't. And sometimes getting better does not mean like quality of life. And so there's really one patient I can really think about off the top of my head where during COVID, they were like one of our sickest patients. He was only like 28 years old, like big guy, like very tall, heavy man, like kind of like the typical comorbidities that everybody who's getting COVID had. And like for being so young, you would think that he was gonna be okay. We got to a point where he was so sick and like constantly like the doctors were talking about changing his code status to family and really like goals of care, comfort measures. He had like one of the highest fevers that I had ever seen a patient have. And like we were doing so much work for him and it just seemed like nothing was getting better for weeks. But his mom was very sweet, always was like bringing us treats, always like telling us how she's praying for us, praying for him. And then eventually after, I think he was there for at least like 2 months until we started to see some improvement. And he was on a ventilator for most of that. And then started getting better. And he was with us, I think, for a total of like 4 months because after getting off the ventilator, just like recovery and getting to a point where he could go to a rehab facility. So he actually came back the next year and visited us during the holidays around the time that he was there with us when he was sick, and like walking, and like he had his daughter with him and his mom, and like came and surprised and like brought us treats for the unit. And literally I just remember there was a handful of us that walked out to go pick it up, and like just started bawling because it's, and he like doesn't remember us. He's like, I barely remember being here, like everything was a blur to him. But just like the fact that we all remember having this patient, and considering most of the people at that time did not survive or did not make it out of the unit. And then if they did, like, we don't know where they're at and how they're doing. And to have this guy come back and like be willing to like show up and show us how he's doing, he's walking, like gets to still be a dad to his little daughter. And that was like, I think, a big moment where it was like all that work and like feeling so discouraged and defeated, and knowing like at least this one person like got to go back to having their life and like a quality life of that. So that was a big, I think, thing that pushed us like to remember like the things that do matter, like why we do this, because I think it's easy to forget that at times.
Yeah, that is amazing that you got to see him after he left the hospital and he actually came back, because some patients we see, they don't come back after they're discharged, and I understand, like, sometimes the hospital can be traumatizing and you don't want to come back to
Yeah.
that. And then also sometimes the patients, that's their last place. The ICU room is their last place until they're in the ground. But I wanted to have you on here because I saw your comment on one of my posts on Facebook. You said that some people have fear on stepping out and changing careers and doing all those things. And I just wanted to know, like, how do you overcome fear when starting new challenges and starting new endeavors?
Yeah, I think that there's still, I mean, I'm human, so I feel like I still struggle with that. There's times that I'm still scared to take like that first step or like take a risk or do something new. And I think it's usually comes down to a self belief issue, in the sense like you either don't think you're worthy of something better or you don't believe that you're capable of doing something better. And so it's like getting to the root cause of why there is fear. And like that's kind of been my approach to it. Thankfully, I've had some awesome relationships in my life and have been mentored in the last 5 years by a handful of really successful people. And a lot of the work of that just looks like doing the mental work of change and being willing to like really invest in myself, pour into myself, personal growth. I read a lot of books that are about how to fix your thought life. And it just comes down to being willing. Like, it's not that fear has to be gone for you to start. It's just that you have to be willing to start even if the fear's there. And then you get to a point where what you thought was scary wasn't as bad as you really thought it would be. And so that's what the first thing is, like I have to pour a lot of belief into myself. Affirmations. How am I speaking to myself? How am I speaking about something I'm trying to do, or an endeavor, an opportunity, like around that opportunity? Like, am I already saying I'm not going to get the job, or am I already saying I'm not capable or I can't learn that? So then I'm disqualifying myself from the start. And if I recognize like my language is already against me, then I need to change it so I can like be on the fighting team for myself first. Like, no, I am capable. Like, I've been prepared for this. If I don't know, I can learn. Like, I'm a hard worker. I'm willing to take the time to learn. Just that shift alone makes it so much easier to like start something different and new. And I think the other part of it too is that sometimes I'm like, what worst case scenario? I mean, most things, like, you're not going to die for trying something new. You know, if you go get a new job or something, I think sometimes that's like usually a big fear of most things, is people like the fear of dying and then what. But it's like, for the most part, that's not going to be the end result of trying different things or new things or taking a chance and stepping out of your comfort zone. I think the worst case scenario is if it fails, then you learn something, and that's a blessing, but you go back to where you were already at. And if you are not happy where you're at, you're miserable, or you aren't content with whatever current situation you're in, then it's like, it's not like it necessarily gets worse. Like you just are back at that starting point and you have to figure something else out. So I think that's a big thing too. I have to remind myself, like, worst case scenario, if I didn't get this job, I still have the one I'm at that I don't want to be at anyways. So why not try and just apply for something different? If I can't learn this skill, okay, maybe that's not something I'm supposed to be pursuing, but there's other things I can figure out. Like, then I know, okay, this is something that's for sure not gonna be a benefit or like add value to the goals I have. And so now I learned that lesson already and I can just keep moving forward versus like thinking, oh, well, what if I were like, what if I would have done that? Or what if I would have tried that thing? Those are things I have to remind myself that help me.
That is awesome because sometimes we have fear because we're afraid of failure. We're afraid to fail in the new things that we try. So, can you tell me a failure that you learned from,
Mm,
that lesson you learned from a failure?
like any type of failure.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's see.
this is a wild card question.
Okay, I'm trying to think like randomly, like what's my most recent failure.
So
Uh
I can go first. What I so a failure that I've had, I wouldn't really call it a failure. I would call it a breakthrough. So
mm,
I had a mental anxiety psychotic episode, and it was from work, and I was like really exhausted and really sick. So it was just like at the start of the pandemic, and I was just like in a chaos state of mind, and I had to be institutionalized for a few days. And what I learned from that is that my pain and all the things that I've been through in my life are what made me who I am today. And it just shows that when we look at our failures, we look at the things that we've tried. And I've tried a lot of businesses, and I'm not a millionaire yet, but I know I will be. And it's just like the thing where I'm trying to get at is not giving up, because there are times when people have failed like thousands of times, and you only see the part of success. You only see them when they're successful. So
yeah,
when we compare people's public success to our private failures, it kind of makes us think less of ourselves, because we're like, oh, look at them. They're so successful. But we don't know how many times they failed, how many times they've gotten it wrong.
yeah.
So that's what the lines I'm coming about, like when I asked you that question. So like, have you thought of something?
I maybe not like a specific event off the top of my head. There's been times just in general, like failure to apply perspective from people that actually have results I want. I can say and generalize with that because there's been a lot of times that's happened. Like I have examples in my life of people who are living out holistically the life I want. And it's very much like perspective based mentorship. Like they're not trying to be my parent or my boss. So it's like I've asked before for advice or perspective. Like, if you're in my shoes, how would you handle this? And then completely just not apply it and ignore it, do
Mhm.
something completely else, thinking, oh, like it's not a big deal. Like I can, like this, what's the worst that can happen type thing. And then get completely off track and distracted, or have a, like unnecessary pain that I caused because of decisions I made by choosing to like listen to my own perspective. And I'm all for like thinking for yourself and taking ownership for your decisions, but sometimes we're too close to the trees of our own forest to see the whole forest, and we like aren't willing.
Mhm.
My apologies. we aren't willing to allow somebody who has a bigger view and maybe not as emotionally attached to our decisions to like speak into us and like give us solid perspective, especially when they already have fruit in that area that you're asking for. And so I think that's something that I can think of with like recent failures and just learning like the more I do that, I feel like the more frustrated I get. And so it's just like recognizing like, okay, well, if I really want like help or I really want perspective or I really want to change, like am I actually willing to listen to people who can truly help me with that? And being
Mhm.
okay, like needing someone else's brain sometimes to help solve a problem.
Yeah, that is so good because there are a lot of if there's a lot of information on the internet and it's useless if we don't apply it, if we don't take action.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that everyone who's listening, like through these episodes on the Scrubs Unzipped podcast, that you be inspired to take action, inspired to go and do the thing that you've always wanted to do, but you just had that fear. And I say do it anyway, even if you do have fear. Don't wait until the fear is gone to take action. Take one step at a time. Is it if it's just like visualizing the success that would come from that decision, visualize that. That's taking one step. And then in like the grand scheme of things, I feel like the universe or the higher power will start moving your mind so you can look for those opportunities that you're looking for, and it'll show up for you and you'll be more aware of it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. So, what do you do when you're not at work? I see you're outside enjoying the beautiful outdoors. How do you balance the stress of your work from when you're not at work?
I feel like I'm still learning that even after 5 years, because there are times where I'm like, wow, I'm just like me and my friend were just talking, like after doing like 2 or 3 days in a row, like we sleep for at least 9 hours. Like it's just, and I don't normally, I sleep normally like five. And so my body's just like, girl, we're going to lay down. And I think it's because it's not just a physically demanding job, like 12 hours
Yes, ma'am.
plus. Yeah, it's a lot, but mentally, yeah. And emotionally, like you just like I just the last week alone, the patients I've encountered and it's like you're not just taking care of your own patients, like especially if you're actually a team player, you're helping your their coworkers out like with their stuff and turns and stuff like that when someone's crashing, like obviously most of us want to be that person to help and make sure that someone's not alone trying to fix that situation, so you're exposed to a lot more than you need to because you're trying to help to your fellow coworkers. And so for me, one, like just general fun, I love to be active. I think that that's a necessity. I think everybody realizes the importance of exercise, but application is not always there. Just like you said, there's all this information, but the application part is missing. And that's just scientifically proven to make you already feel better. Like you have to get your body moving. And so I think for me, that's a big thing. Like, I want to be grateful for my health in the days that I'm off, like, and actually take advantage of the fact that I still have the ability to walk and I can lift heavy things, or I can go and do things that a lot of people might not be able to do and enjoy that. And then I love to roller skate. I think that became super big during COVID. And so I was one of those people who jumped on the wagon and I was like, understood why it became therapy for a lot of people. And there were days when it was really bad during COVID. And right when things started to open up again, I would be at the rink like 3 or 4 times a week, which is excessive. I don't do that
Oh, wow.
anymore. I don't do that anymore. But like that was something like I just needed that time where I can just like literally kind of be a child again, I guess, in that state because I loved skating as a kid and I didn't have to like think about anything besides like the movement and what I was trying to learn. And I wasn't like having to sit here and worry about work or who's sick and trying to fix this thing. And so that's been a big thing. I have a faith, and so for me, like personally, I have to put quiet time aside, like whether I'm just hashing things out with God or I'm just talking. There's been plenty of times I've just sat in silence or sat with music on and then I just am crying and I'm like, okay, like this is where we're at right now, like having to have that release. but in a safe space. So not only just my quiet time with God, but with safe people too. Like I have people who
Mhm.
I can share things with and how things were at work, and they're not, I guess, taking me further down the hole, like wanting these details that are unnecessary to share, or like excited about something when you're trying to share and you're like actually like it's affecting you emotionally. So like I know the safe spaces I can like open up to, and I have a lot of friends that obviously do the same work as me. So like they understand too, and we could talk about it from a place of mutual understanding. So that's kind of how I take care of the stress part of work. And I don't try to take extra on that I don't need to. Like it's hard not to take work home with you mentally because you are with people, and sometimes you have the same person like you're taking care of for like days or weeks, and you want to know how they're doing. But I also don't try to like overly make myself available to things that are happening at work when I'm not there, because I don't need all the extra exposure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because I try to, I don't know, it's like I try to mentally just like when I walk in the door, but it's hard to do. Like when you walk in the door, you like cut off like your home life and you focus on work, and then when you walk out the hospital doors, you turn that off, and it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. And I think when you have like your routine, like I have a routine when I start work and when I finish work, so I can just physically like take out all the layers and just like release that part, that emotional part of doing our job. And so I'm just like, it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy, but I do have like support, like how you're saying, having people that you can talk to. I have my therapist. So I talk to my therapist, and
Everybody needs a
I talk to some I talk to some of my friends because sometimes your friends they want to, they're like too close, and they like they're too close. When you have a therapist, you actually get to talk about what you want to talk about, and it's all about you. And like you don't, because a therapist relationship is only a one-sided relationship. So but when you're friends with someone and you're, so you don't want to like dump on your friends all the time. So that's why I feel like I talk to my therapist, and I have some resources on how to choose a great therapist, because I believe that's very important, because we don't want to, that's the whole reason why I make this podcast, because there's so many people who work with us that have stories that we don't even know about, and they work, like they work with us, and we spend like 12 hours with them each night and 36 hours a week. So I thank you so much for answering the call to be on the podcast. And I just wanted to ask you a off the wall question. Imagine you had a time machine that you could take back to your early days in healthcare. What's one thing you tell your younger self besides investing in Google? Of course.
maybe invest in more Amazon. I'm kidding, but
No
uh,
investing. No
yeah,
investing.
no investing. Okay, if I was just strictly talking to me about healthcare, not like personal life, not my other business adventures and things like that, I think that I would tell myself to be okay standing up for myself earlier on. Realize that like your voice does matter, and like, you know, like advocate for yourself just like you would advocate for your patients, because there's been plenty of people who are willing to take advantage of you if you don't. Genuinely like try and maybe start better routines early on, like have something positive to start when you go in on your day, like, and have something positive to take with you when you leave. Yeah, I think just like being more prepared for the mental work that it takes, like being in this profession, and like finding like the healthy outlets and the positive things that you can do to like get yourself in a position where like you're filling up your cup constantly when you go
Mhm.
into your shift, when you're coming out, and doing it sooner than waiting for you to be completely drained, and then now you have to figure out how to get yourself to get up and like want to go to work and show up and like and being grateful. I think if I started doing grateful lists like from the beginning and realizing how many things I should be grateful for, not just because of opportunities like my job lets me have, but like the things I don't have to experience, like seeing certain people come in and patients I take care of, like being grateful I don't have to experience that. I think just sets like a different tone. Like, cause I know when I leave, I get to leave healthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. So, is there anything you'd like our listeners to know about you? Like, we didn't even discuss like all of your side hustles. Like, you can name like one side hustle that you have, one project that you're working on.
I have a few things I'm currently working on, but like my main thing honestly has been really just pouring into my e-commerce business. And I know I shared that with you before, but that's like a whole different conversation. I think that with that, like obviously if people want like service and wanting to be served as clients in the sense of like helping them find needs or like helping them find products for certain needs they have, like everyday essentials and consumable things, like I'm more than happy to help them in that way and like have a relational experience versus transactional. But my biggest thing too, I would just say, is like not even just for like my own stuff, like is to encourage people like really ask yourself like how do you want to live, because I think just that chat alone that we met on, there's been
Hmm.
so many more comments at it, and it just is sad reading how many people are like miserable and they feel stuck. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you truly can create a different life, you just have to take the risk and like ask yourself really like how you want to live, and then look around and truly try to find people who are living that out and ask them how to get there. Like build the relationships. Like it doesn't have to be someone like me helping them or someone like you per se, but like be willing to at least like take the time to take the risk and do something different, or find people who can help you who are already succeeding in the life that you want to live, not just what they're doing, but the quality of life that it produces. That's what I would encourage everyone to do, because it's unfortunate, like the fact that so many people are miserable but they feel stuck, and we live in a
Yeah.
country, as cheesy as it sounds, like we have so much more freedom and opportunity to just make a change like any moment when we want to, versus in some other countries where they don't even have the choice of that. And
Hmm.
so there are still so many people fighting to get here, not just because benefits or things like that, like it's because there's opportunity that they don't have. And so I don't know, I just want to encourage people to not be scared to bet on themselves a bit. And if you, like you said, you can fail multiple times, that doesn't mean you should give up. Like anybody who's been successful, if you actually read a biography or hear something about their stories and how it started, it took them a lot of times before they got there. So
Yeah.
that's what I would share.
Awesome. That is so amazing. Thank you so much for joining on Scrubs Unzipped. And I hope you have a great day and check out our other episodes.